Well, hello, internet friends, and welcome to episode number 110 of Final Boss TV, your WoW and Game Rating show. I'm your host, my name's Adam K.K. Bay, and today's show is another junket for the Let's Talk Legion, which is basically all I can do right now because, you want to talk about garrisons for an hour and a half? That's what I thought. We'll talk about the new garrisons, however, in Legion, which are basically the artifact weapons, sort of, kind of. So we're going to talk about warlocks today, predominantly demonology warlocks, and shadow priests, and just see how good life might be when shadow orbs are gone. So who's on the show with me today? Well, I mean, you can read their names above my head right there, but we'll bounce over and introduce someone that's been on the show like 19 times right now. He's vying for top spot up next to Roger Brown. There's Twin Top. Hello, sir.
Hello, hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. You just moved recently. Congrats on that.
Thank you. Recently, I haven't had a chance to get Frostmourne put anywhere.
Yeah, I know. He has it in a box, chat. What is this? It's in a... David.
I mean, it's trying to take my soul, so I have to...
Keep it shielded?
Yeah, until I can get it as proper place.
Okay, I'll take it. I mean, your nerd wall behind you is very good. We can't even see all of it, but it keeps going, chat. There are 2 more shelves behind this man, full of Murlocs and Frost Wolfies, and is that Hogger I see?
There's a Hogger, there's both Fey Dragons, Zergling, everything, basically.
Oh my god. Maybe I'll get you to show that off later in the show. But joining us again to represent the Warlock community today, there's Pyromancer. Hello, sir. Welcome back.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Again, yeah. It's been I had to go back and look back at how long it's been since you guys were on the show, and it was like, they weren't on the show that long ago, and the junkets we had for Legion, for Warlords, were so long ago. It's been months and months and months, but... It feels like a long time for sure.
Because you were on the show with all the Warlock buddies, each of you took 1 spec, but now you have to talk about all of them yourself. Are you ready to do that?
I'm ready.
Are you sure? Everything you get wrong is 1 strike against you to get kicked out of Vulgar. Are you ready for that?
Oh no, dude, I'm gone, dude.
Oh man, it should be good. Chat joins us today in the show. There'll be a neat little chat pop-up now when people talk. I'm waiting for it to happen. I don't know. Hopefully it isn't broken, which it might be. It happens sometimes. But so yeah, we are going to be talking about Shadow Priests and Warlocks today. Again, we'll talk a little bit about Destruction. We'll talk a little bit about Affliction. But if you guys want to answer a question for me real quick while I reset the chat box, which is not working for some reason. I want chat to be in the show, live editing for some reason. Let's do this, and let's find it. Where did it go? Help. It's over my face. There we go. Now chat should be... Chat, talk to me. Chat. It's broken. This is so weird. It's not working.
It was working just fine before, wasn't
it? Was. I tested it before the show, and I was like, oh, it's working fine. And now it's just not going to show up. I am the sads. Well, there's a giant black box next to me right now. So, yeah, I had the open question here. That how is the Legion Alpha Beta going so far for the both of you? I don't know. Pyro, you want to open us up here? What have you been testing so far? How's things going?
Of course, primarily demonology, kind of the different scenarios in which you can properly utilize the spells that it has. Mm-hmm. I've been working a lot, honestly, so I haven't had a ton of alpha time, and a lot of the alpha time that I've had has been broken, like ridiculously broken. Like the first quest of Stormheim and the other one, I don't remember what the other zone's even called. Both of the first quests were broken, so I had to wait like a week to even touch those zones at all. I just couldn't get into them, so it's been limited, but alpha is alpha. Alpha is alpha.
Yeah, I mean, or whatever the hell it is right now. I mean, back at BlizzCon, they said that beta would be live at the end of November.
Yeah.
So then Wemo and I were all set. We're like, all right, we're going to make all these things. We have to have 3 passes. We need to have artifact weapons. We need to have class halls. We need to have dungeons and stuff. He's still working on things now, but he made so many that said Legion Beta. We're like, all right, we're ready to go. And then they pop out in December with calling it alpha, and I'm like, are you kidding me, mate?
Well, I mean, if
Because
they call it alpha instead of beta, they can't have. Well, if people try to complain that the beta's been
They get
going
away
on
with
too long,
more.
they can say, "Oh, but it wasn't actually
Yeah.
beta; it was alpha. You guys just got to see how the sausage was made."
I just don't. It maybe, but I really can't. I don't know. It's. I call my testing beta testing. It's an unreleased product, man. Okay, it's not done yet. It's not feature complete. But we're not gonna
1.0,
change.
alpha, beta,
Yeah,
live.
we're not gonna be changing all of the art. So deal with it, because there's like over 100 pieces of art to change, and I'm not gonna have Whammo go into each PSD, each layer, and change that, and then resave them all back to me. No, that's just ridiculous. So poop. But David, how about you? What have you been testing so far in Legion?
This may come as a bit of a shock, but I've been trying to test Shadow Priest.
No way.
I know. I mean, a little bit of Holy DPS, a little bit,
Oh,
not really.
God.
Holy
Uh,
DPS. Oh, man.
Actually, I did all of normal HFC in an all priest raid as Holy DPS. I went toe to toe with automatic Jack and
Oh.
RNG one, but that's not really Legion stuff. Mostly just playing around, seeing how all the changes really are playing out, because the whole spec is being turned on its head. You know, we've had Shadow Orbs for 2 expansions now, and there wasn't a lot of change going from Mists of Pandaria to Warlords of Draenor, and now everything's just totally different. How you play. So, just trying to focus in on trying to relearn what Shadow is actually capable of,
Yeah.
and find things that aren't quite polished. I mean, alpha is alpha.
Right. I mean, I'm gonna ask you the big question later on about that crazy new talent that you have. So we'll have to see how that works out. But next question for both of you. I was going to ask you what do you think of Deadpool, but you both haven't seen the movie yet. So we're no longer friends. The show is over, and I'll see you
See ya.
all.
See you
I'll
later.
see you all next week.
Bye, fam. We're out.
Yeah. Oh man. So I'll have to ask you then, Pyro.
Yeah.
Pancakes or waffles?
I gave you the same answer last time, man. I'm pretty sure it's got to be the waffles. Got to be the waffles every time.
Respectable. Twin top.
Depends on what kind of mood I'm in.
Okay.
But I mean,
You just way to go.
waffles, like, I do enjoy some chicken waffles. I really do.
Mm.
But, you know, there comes a time once a month or so where it gets to be, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. It's like, you know what? I can really go for breakfast for dinner. I need some pancakes.
I mean, I'll allow it. That's totally fine with me. But I can't ask you about Deadpool. I have seen Deadpool twice, and it is good. It is very violent, but honestly, it's also like a really good. It's kind of an atypical-ish comic book love story, but it's a really, really good love story, right? It's a good movie. You guys should all go see Deadpool right now. Don't watch the show
Deadpool
anymore. Just
sponsor.
go. Not a sponsor, but go see it. Oh my goodness. All right, so let's play some spec ping pong here and jump right into it. So we will try to get through this a little bit. I've learned a lot through these junkets so far that we can't spend as much time talking about generalistic stuff because I want to get through talents and I want to talk about artifact weapons a little bit more. It's only volume 3 of this show, so I'm kind of like learning as we go along here. So first off, David, we'll bring up Shadow Priest real quick. So you said it in your little opening that goodbye Shadow Orbs. So those are gone. And you are new, I put on the notes, Mental Anguish, Digivolve to Madness. So tell me about the mastery change and the lack of Shadow Orbs, or just that they're just gone. So what's the big changes, sir?
So, Shadow Orbs are totally gone, which I am completely fine with. They were a more hamstrung version of Holy Power when you boil it down to it.
Mhm.
Slower building, limited in what you could use it for, just not super engaging, very rhythmic. Now you have an insanity bar. Mana's gone completely as well for Shadow Priest. So
Yep.
everything either has no cost and is just on a cooldown, or it has an insanity cost for things like silence or mass dispel, or trying to heal another person. If you have any insanity, it'll drain a little bit of that away. But the main gameplay mechanic now is you build insanity through using various abilities, usually your big nukes, although there are some ways that dots can generate insanity as well. And when you reach 100% insanity, you go insane and you switch from shadow form to void form, and your insanity slowly starts to drain away, but your damage is increased and you start gaining more and more haste so you can do things faster. And it ramps up the gameplay all the way across the board, from being very predictable and rhythmic to a little bit fast paced, need to try to plan a couple of steps ahead, especially if you're trying to do like a multi-target situation. It's really like when you're outside of void form trying to build into it, it's more like old Wrath and a little bit of Cataclysm Shadow Priest playstyle. And then when you're inside of void form, it's a little bit more like COP, Clarity of Power currently is.
Okay.
Just in being faster paced, things coming off cooldown more often, and just nuke.
When I was testing in my first pass video for the Shadow Priest, which now things have been changed a bit, where actually Shadow Form is now like a on use, like cooldown, quote unquote, where you use the spell when you actually have max insanity to go into void form. The new minigame that was propping up to me, which I think a lot of the Shadow Priests will start using, that'll be like the new like benchmark for like gear scaling, or like how well you can balance this out, which is kind of a fun resource, because you actually kind of, the player kind of gets a little bit like, I gotta this and then this, I can't miss this button, oh I can't weave this in it, you know, it kind of makes you go a little nutty sometimes too. But it's how many stacks of residual insanity you can keep up. And I think I got somewhere close to 90 plus before I bricked it with Sent to Madness. So like, how is that like the new mini game that you're going to compare like metrics with all these Shadow Priests? Like, how many stacks did you get on this fight at one point in time? Like, I got 64, like, haha, I got 65, you know? Like, is that like, that's the new thing that's going to develop? I really feel it. What do you think?
It's definitely going to be a large part of it. There is going to be an EPing factor for, well, on Boss A, I was able to get up to 45 stacks. Ooh!
Right.
But in reality, it's going to be more about having maximum void form uptime and trying to get the highest average stack count, I think.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of tuning to be done still, and things are totally changing all the time. That change that you mentioned, where void form is toggleable now, that was introduced in the last build earlier this week. Before that, when you got to 100 insanity, you just went into void form. It's a good quality of life change, don't get me wrong, but it just goes to show that even little things can have a giant impact. I think what you're going to want to shoot for overall is having a high average stack count, because in my testing, at least, I could go into void form roughly every 45 seconds. It depends on what talents you take, of course. But if you're going into void form faster than once every minute, then you don't have Void Torrent, which is an ability on our artifact available, which really helps prolong and get a higher stack count and does a lot of damage, because it's on a 1 minute cooldown. So there may be some times where it's better to get a really long one and then purposefully cut one short.
Okay.
So that you can get back into the next one to use all your cooldowns again. It's amazing. Shadow Priests have some cooldowns.
Yeah, it's definitely, so I'll bring this up real quick because you mentioned Void Torrent and why it's so good. So this is your default unlock with the Zell. How do you pronounce your artifact weapon? Your dagger?
I have no idea. You know, I haven't actually said it out loud.
I want to say it's
Believe it or not.
Zell Athoth, like Athoth? Zell Athoth?
I am going to defer to you.
I don't know. I mean, so Zal Athoth, the Blade of the Black Empire, which I'm sure we'll find out more about the Black Empire in the Chronicle series coming out, but yeah. So Void Torrent, you raise your dagger to the sky, which you actually use your dagger in this animation, which is pretty cool. And you absorb nearby void energy and then release a torrent of void energy at your target, and you deal a whole bunch of spell power damage over 4 seconds, but while channeling the spell, your insanity no longer drains.
Yes. So this can be used typically when you're at, so one of the things about insanity when you're in void form is the longer you're in void form, the faster you lose insanity. So when you start getting up to 25, 30 stacks,
Mhm.
you're losing insanity really, really, really fast. So having an ability like Void Torrent that pauses all of the drain can let you eke out another couple of stacks at the end of a Void form phase.
Mhm.
Now
Okay.
it can also let you get some of your bigger cooldowns to come off cooldown, which can then help you push a little bit further in to get even more stacks. It's very, it plays very nicely. It fits with the overall gameplay style, which is nice.
So do you, yeah, because chat brings this up in a side comment, like the torrent does so much damage, using it on cooldown is likely better. So do you feel like you wouldn't pair it up with each void form, or would you kind of like go into void form, use it, go ham, and like your next void form that you might have wouldn't have void torrent, so you would like you want to have like like a long one and a short one and a long one and a short one, or how do you think that's gonna work out?
It, but exactly, like it's all going to come down to how much of a benefit is that extra couple of stacks of haste going to be from extending it at the end versus making sure that you use it on cooldown.
Mhm.
And that, like you said, goes back to trying to either make sure that every void form phase is about a minute long,
Okay.
or trying to use it on cooldown, or make it so that you have a long void form phase and a short void form phase. The other thing to keep in mind is it's only a DPS loss if you don't use the ability the maximum number of times during an encounter. So
Okay.
if you need to delay it 10 seconds, let's say, if a fight only lasts 5 minutes, you're not going to lose any usage. But if it goes 6 minutes, then you're going to end up missing out on one usage. So
Mm.
knowing how long the fight's going to be and timing the usage of it with probably even things like trinket procs, and especially if you have like intellect or spell power procs, is going to be big because it does do so much damage.
Okay. And now, before I move on to apparently the demonology warlock discussion is not going to be this complex, Pyro.
Not really.
So Shadow Priest AOE, right? It's always been this weird sore spot for the Shadow Priest, and I kind of feel that outside looking in, I never thought it was like a huge deal because like, other classes are going to have better options for AOE in their talent specializations, right? That you do get the freaking General Vizax Mind Spike,
Yes.
right? But I always
If
thought
you
that
spec it. If you decide to
spec
spec
it. But Shadow Priest always sort of felt like that their AoE was like that they're really good on single target tunneling and they're really good on cleave, but then they don't exceed at AoE though. Like a class shouldn't be able to do good at all three things. That's what happened with Demonology Warlock currently in Warlords. So
Warlock.
that's why it
point of
was nerfed.
clarification on that.
Right.
Shadow single target has never been super stellar. Our niche has always been like council fights where you can do dot cleave.
Okay.
And I think I speak for most Shadow Priest players when I say that's kind of the niche that we like to excel at. It's aggravating when there's other specs and classes that are better than us at that and are also better at other things than us too, because it's like, well,
Warlock.
yeah, warlock, yeah,
Well.
exactly. It is a bit of a sore spot. But there are some things being added in Legion that are going to help, but it's kind of complicated to be able to pull off good damage. Right now, what most Shadow Priests are used to is take Cascade and cast it Fire and Forget, which I
Right.
don't think is a good solution. It's not fun. It's just a button you press when there's a bunch of ads out. It's not engaging. And then Mind Seer if everything's stacked up. What they're doing now is there is an ability on your artifact called Void Corruption, which when you cast Mind Seer, any targets that get hit by Mind Seer that have Shadow Word Pain or Vampiric Touch on them, it causes those dots to immediately tick for 20% per stack of or per rank of Void Corruption right away. So what it becomes now is you have to have a bunch of targets all together. You need to put one or both of your dots up, which limits how many you can actually throw them on before you start mind searing. And if the ads aren't very long lived, like as you start progressing through, or you finish progressing through a raid tier and you get to absurdly short kill times, you're not even going to have a chance to throw any dots up. You're just going to mind sear.
Okay.
So in some ways, it becomes a bit of a dead artifact trait once you get through progression or once you start overgearing things for progression. One thing I will say that I really enjoy is while leveling, so far, I can run around and just throw Vampiric Touch out on everything. Because
Everything?
it heals all the things. Because it heals you every time it ticks.
Right.
So tag everything, group it up like 5 or 6, and Mind Sear. And every time it ticks, it heals you. And you generate insanity, and you're golden.
And technically, you have an artifact perk that overhealing from it will actually grant you a shield.
Yes, that is, I believe, Mental Fortitude.
Yes. Ooh,
And,
look at you knowing all of your hooks already. Yeah, it's mental fortitude.
I'm trying.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But so it's complicated to do effective AoE.
Mhm.
Our level 90 talents, Divine Star, Cascade, and Halo, are all gone for Shadow,
Yes.
which is a good thing in my opinion. But trying to do effective AoE, we have a way to do it. Like if you need to kill a bunch of ads, but you need to kill them at a very specific time, then our AoE is great because you can dot everything up and go right when you need to.
Okay.
But if there's a situation where you don't have any prep time, it's still not great. And of course, then you have Shadow Crash, which the issue with Shadow Crash, in my opinion, is it has a travel time.
Yep.
And that travel time is constant regardless of how far away the targets are. So at least you know how long it's always going to take to land, regardless of how far away you are. But at the same time, if you don't know exactly where a group of ads is going to be, or it moves after you've already targeted it to send it out, then you're up a creek. At least you still get the insanity when you cast it, though.
Sure. Right. As you cast it, you get 15. Yeah.
Yes. I think they should add something to it where you get insanity for every target hit. That would bring it more in line with Powered for Infusion and Mindbender.
Interesting. I was thinking it should work like, and just, I don't know, if insanity that too much, that would honestly make it awkward for Void Form. You think it'd be too powerful? Because like if you use it on like Manaroth, when you're hitting like what 8 imps, and if it gave you like how much per, and then it has to be like enough that it makes it worth it on like low targets, but are not enough to make it like amazing on like high targets, or have diminishing returns, or have like an effect where up to so many targets it gives you this many, but then after that it gives you this many. Because like on Scorpion so far for testing, like you can have 4 scorpions or 8 scorpions or 12 scorpions. So then where's like the cutoff there? Whereas like in my mind you would just have other better equipped AoEers worry about that, and the Shadow Priest would just continuously dot the boss and the Red Scorpion, and then focus on those 2 targets, right? And not have to worry about Shadow Crash shenanigans and all this other weirdness. But
so one of the trade-offs is right now, if you take Shadow Crash versus Mindbender Power Infusion, is it does give you AoE damage.
Okay.
At the expense of insanity generation, because it's 30 insanity a minute if you use it on cooldown, whereas Mindbender generates 5 insanity every time it hits. And it's going to get, because it's 20 seconds long, it's going to get 12 or 13, or a lot more if you have high stacks of lingering insanity swings in every minute.
Right.
So it's one of those, there should be a bit of a penalty because you're gaining extra abilities, or you're able to fill another niche, but I think that it's a little too punishing right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just see how it changes. I know that at first, obviously numbers aren't being tuned right now, everyone, please.
Yeah.
It's a design pass right now. It's probably why they're also under the alpha flag, right? It's not under the beta flag, right? Because they're not content complete. But I know at first when I was using Shadow Crash back when I first tested Shadow Priest, that it did like no damage. It was laughable. Like it would like the spell coefficient behind the scenes was just never going to be worth the damn. You were like, this is not good.
Yep.
So,
and we have heard that Shadow Crash is going to do a lot of damage. It's going to be worth using.
It's 333.3% of spell power in the last build. I don't know if that's still not enough, but it can't be too much because it doesn't even meteor though. That's just one bonus. It does not meteor.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it works as you add targets.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to test it on a large pack. I don't know if there's a target cap and then it starts diminishing returns, or if it's that 333.3 divided by the number of targets it hits.
Maybe.
I really don't know, and those sorts of things are going to make a big difference.
Absolutely. Alrighty then. Pyro, you have a little bit more to talk about technically. That's why I kind of kept going a little more with Shadow Priest. So again, we're going to talk about Demonology Warlock predominantly during the show today. But first off, I do want to ask you, from what we know of Destruction and what we can see on the talent list or the artifact stuff, what do you see for Destruction so far? Like, what's the direction it's going in compared to live?
I mean, currently live, it's pretty dull state, and I'm a Destruction fanboy, so I'm not really gonna try to defend it too much in this. That it is pretty dull. I mean, Charged Remains, if there's AoE, you turn on Fire and Brimstone and you Chaos Bolt. If there's something that's within Shadowburn range, you Havoc it and you Shadowburn it. If it's neither of those, then you just Chaos Bolt. And with how many embers we actually generate, the importance of actually lining up your Chaos Bolts with procs is far less than how it used to be back in Siege, for example, where it was just massive hits. They had to be lined up with cooldowns, otherwise it was going to be huge DPS loss. Whereas in Legion, they've kind of changed things up a bit. So they've taken two baseline things that are built into your spellbook, being Shadowburn and Fire and Brimstone, and put them on a talent tree, right, into your talents. And they're on the same one. So that's kind of problematic because Shadowburn's always been there as that thing's going to die, I'm going to Shadowburn it, instantly get some resources, good to go, keep rolling. Whereas now you're going to have to kind of choose between AoE and your Shadowburn ability. And they've also made some weird changes to things like, I mentioned this to you earlier, Infernal, like your Rain of Fire is apparently supposed to now call down Infernals. So I'm kind of curious as to where that's going to go.
I hope they're little baby Infernals, like little tiny ones.
Oh man, I hope so, because have you seen the scaling issue with Infernals right now?
They're a little.
They're gigantic.
They're large, I suppose.
they're like 40 feet tall.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting. Of course, we're back to Soul Shards with Destruction.
Yep.
And your Chaos Bolt is going to consume 2 of those at a time. So Chaos Bolt's going to hit pretty hard. But I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Alrighty. Well, then to change gears on that one, we have tested Affliction, and Affliction has changed a little bit from my first pass to now. But it looks like it's kind of like a mana battery spec. It's probably the most mana intensive spec of the 3 for Warlock, where it is you put up a whole bunch of dots and you spam Drain Life or Drain Soul if you talent it, and that just dunks your mana. So life tap is an integral part of the Affliction Warlock, right? Like taking your health, making it mana, keep rolling your dots. And then you can add mana tap into that amalgamation of like, well, I gotta mana tap is like really good, but I have to make sure I life tap, and then mana tap before I life tap, then I gotta life tap like twice here, and then I gotta fill this in, and then I gotta make sure I drain life here, and then I put up my dot. So how is Affliction looking for Legion?
Very interesting. We have Soul Effigy, which is when people first saw that, they're like, oh my god,
Crystal.
Prismatic Crystal, except for not as good as Prismatic Crystal. I mean, it follows the boss technically, like it'll continue to hit the boss even if the boss is not right next to it. But the damage generated by it only does 50% of that damage that you do to it to the boss. So, or whatever target it's on. And so once you're out of like single target, essentially, single target, maybe 2 target, it's not worth using anymore. Because you get your other talents in there. The Singularity is pretty crazy for AoE. When we tested Scorpion, or Scorpion, however you want to pronounce that.
Mr. Ron, actually. He likes to be Mr. Ron.
Yeah. When we tested that, I was using the talent, Sow the Seeds, I believe is what it's called, where your Seed of Corruption also spreads to 4 other targets. So you have 5 seeds, and then you throw on Phantom Singularity, which triggers all of them, and all the seeds go off, and it's just pretty insane AoE damage. The only thing that was beating that was Mage, of course, big surprise. And so that was pretty interesting. As far as the mana thing goes, you're right. We have an ability now that gives us damage when we sacrifice mana, but you sacrifice health to get mana back. The good thing about it is it's percentage based. So even if you're at a very, very low amount of mana, you can still do it. There's no real limit because it's a percentage based drain. And that's good because that means when you are getting starved and you're like, okay, I need a life tap, then I need to mana tap that, and it's kind of bouncing back and forth. It's a little more freely casted. As far as shards go, I mean, shard generation is now primarily gained through agony instead of corruption. But there seems to be no limit on the targets that you can have dotted to generate you soul shards from agony. So you can dot the shit out of everything.
Right.
But Seed of Corruption doesn't put agony on everything, so it has to be manually applied, which is fine. But shards aren't really an issue for AF, at least in any sort of AoE, any sort of multi-target. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it looked like it had, because right now, from my understanding of Affliction is, and this goes back to the whole new like mantra that Blizzard is chanting internally, around their Nerf bat fires, is that they want every spec to feel like its own little self-contained hero. Yeah. Where no matter if you're a hybrid, or a hybrid, right, quote unquote anymore now, or a pure DPS class, you can change your talents only, or maybe even your relics in your artifact weapon, to tailor yourself to a fight, if you need it to. Some specs are still going to have, like, better AoE, like Arms Warrior, Fury Warrior are still going to have amazing burst AoE. Enhancement Shamans are still going to have crazy consistent AoE, same thing with Elemental Shaman. So some other classes will be able to fill that if you need it. You need more AoE on a fight. Well, let's take, Bob and Tim and Vanessa go AoE specs, right? Get in there. And, everyone else just single target the boss. That's what they want to do. But Affliction right now on Warlords is just like, you can tunnel the boss, or you can tunnel the boss. But Affliction on Legion, like you said, you have a ton of, like, AoE nonsense you can do.
Yeah.
So it's a huge shift. And the fact that, like, you have to constantly pay attention to, and some people, like, while I was testing this, were really excited. They're like, oh, Life Tap is back, woo! Or some people are like, Life Tap is back, woo!
Yay!
Which is very polarizing. I think it's very thematic, but it's going to be a big change.
It's one of those things where, especially if you are going to run Mana Tap, which in some situations it will be good, right. You're going to have to find that balance, really, between your Mana Tap, between your Life Tap, between filling with your spells, between actually doing damage and spending GCDs to allow yourself to do more damage. There's going to be a cutoff at some point where spending all of those GCDs in order to keep Mana Tap up is not worth it because of the amount of GCDs that you're spending on it, and you're spending on Life Tap. So there's going to be a cutoff there. I don't know, maybe that could be something related to haste, maybe something, just gear related later on. But for now, it's really interesting, and I think that the reason that they went towards that more hybrid-esque, not hybrid as in heal and DPS, but AoE and single target, is because of the outcry that Affliction Warlocks had, which I understand to a point, but I also don't understand because you have Demo and Destruction. I mean, if you want something that has AoE, you need to spec into that and play that, because we have 3 DPS classes. If you can't play all 3, I don't know,
But that's the new thing. If you want to play an Affliction Warlock for all of Legion, you're going to be able to, essentially. I mean, if you're not, and this whole example goes that if you're in like a top 100 rating guild in the world, or even like maybe not even top 100, but top 50, you'll min-max to like a spec as it's supposed to be done, which Godspeed to you on leveling up all those artifact weapons early on in the expansion progression race. But otherwise, for anyone else, if you're not a top-end Mythic Raider, and if you want to play a Frost Mage for the entire expansion, just play a Frost Mage, right? Yeah. And then depending on the encounters, you might be able to change up your spec and your talents a little bit to assume the way to attack this encounter.
I think that's good because, I mean, I think it's good, but I also think it's bad because I like the idea of reinforcement of being able to play all 3 specs, especially as a pure DPS class. I really do think that if you're going to raid at a mythic level, that you should know as a warlock how to play all 3 specs adequately. And that's not to say that this would necessarily prevent that, but because of how you mentioned with the artifact weapon, they have 3 different ones, and having to balance them and take care of all of them is going to be kind of tedious. And so I'm excited to see how we're going to have to balance that and what kind of strategies we're going to have going about that, and the amount of time that we're going to have to put into it. Because eventually, when you have your weapon maxed out and everything, it won't be a problem. But the good thing about Warlock is that they're very versatile. Probably, in my opinion, one of the most versatile specs or, individually in classes in the game. Because there's not really anything that one of the Warlock specs can't do, whether you're looking for AoE, whether you're looking for single target, or a little bit of both in destruction. And so I like that they're trying to balance it even more between the specs so that all three can do it, but all three of them already can do it amongst each other. Like there's always one that's good at one thing.
It's the hero class whole balancing idea is really, it works well for like a Shadow Priest or an Enhancement Shaman or an Elemental Shaman, right? Because I'm not going to go Elemental on a fight because it's a totally different play style and it's also a ranged class and a melee class, right?
Exactly.
Like, David can't do anything else besides be a Shadow Priest, right? He can go Discipline and only damage. Holy DPS! But that's not gonna happen, right? So for pures though, for Mage, Hunter, Warlock, and Rogue, it's a little different because if you can do everything as one, then it really comes down to like personal choice, or like maybe if Subtlety does better single target than the other two, you have to have Subtlety also maxed up. But then if Assassination does really good AoE, you have to have Assassination as well. But what if Combat's best for Cleave? Like it's still gonna be there. Yeah.
It's just, I think that the thing that is poor about it is that for raiders, that are at that higher end, or even raiders that are striving to be at that higher end, that is still going to exist. And that sucks because it's going to force you to go out of your way to get all of the other things, because there's no way, like, and I have faith in Blizzard as a company holistically, in general, but there's no way that they're going to be able to balance that Demo, Af, and Destro are equal on every fight. That will never happen.
No.
Never, ever, ever, ever. They could spend 5 years trying to balance that and it will never happen. And so that kind of forces us to pick up the extra artifact, to spend the extra time, which is fine. But as long as it plays well and it's enjoyable, I don't care. But if it's going to be, something where I have to play Demo on this fight because it's good, even though the playstyle of it is awful, when this guy's doing a little bit less damage, playing Destro, but still not min-maxing, that's going to be a little frustrating.
Well, I'll move us on to the meat and potatoes of the Warlock discussion now then. So Demonology is one of the new, completely redone specs in Legion. Like from the ground up, it is 100% different. And whereas many other specs in Legion right now are going under this whole, like, the new keyword, of course, is fantasy, to rebuild them. Like mine, for example, Enhancement Shaman is totally different. Like, it's a very new class. But Demonology is, I said before, you're like a train conductor conducting a train full of animals, but instead of animals, they're all demons. So how is Demonology changing from Warlords to Legion?
So primarily in Legion, Warlords, rather. If you're playing Demo now, you're only really playing it on 2 fights, unless you have super mega farm status and you just don't care.
Right.
You're playing it on Cormorant if you like to pad, really, is what it is. And you're playing it on Manaroth. You don't play it on anything else for any reason, really, because Destro and Affliction, if you have fast enough kill times, absolutely obliterate Demo. There's no competition at all. But Demo, currently, the current rendition, as everyone knows it, but not everyone loves it, is the Metamorphosis popping in and out of it, where you actually turn into a demon. And as it is now, when you pop into Demo, 4 or 5 of your abilities change. So your Corruption turns to Doom, your Hand of Gul'dan turns to Chaos Wave, your Shadow Bolt turns to Touch of Chaos, and your Hellfire turns into Immolation Aura. Whereas in Legion, that's gone. Absolutely zero Metamorphosis at all. Completely removed, completely scrapped, given to Demon Hunter. And so now there's no ability changes. It's just summon demons, empower them, watch them absolutely destroy whatever it is that you're attacking, then summon more demons, and then use them to explode this target to inspire these other demons. And it's just, like you said, conducting a huge operation of multiple things. And I'm just hoping, like we discussed earlier, that there is some form of limitation on other players' ability to see those pets, because if not, it's going to be bad.
Yeah, I don't think I'm scrolling through all the different demon new abilities here on screen, and it is really just summon demons, buff demons. Summon more demons, buff more demons. Oh wait, really summon demons, buff more demons. That's all it is.
Guess what we're gonna do next?
Yeah, I'm gonna summon demons, and I'm gonna buff those demons. It's cool. It's a different style. Both Beast Mastery Hunter and Demonology Warlock, I say in my first passes, are very they're both Zookeeper specs now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Demonology far more so than Beast Mastery, because Beast Mastery right now is still like, yeah, it's a dire beast here or there. But Demonology is
20.
yeah,
20.
Demonology is like 3 Dreadstalkers with 3 imps riding them, with Hand of Gul'dan spawning 4 to 8 imps, with your pet out, with maybe 1 more if you want to take Servitude, or not Servitude, Service.
Yeah.
You got like an Inquisitor pops out as well, and he's like Frostbolts everything,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah, it's good. It's cool because it is a very, very engaging spec. However, it is very spammy. And if you're a warlock that likes to look at MMO Champion, I mentioned this to you earlier. They mentioned a change in a blue post that your demonic empowerment is not supposed to be stacks and it doesn't have a cooldown. It is free to use at your will at any given moment with no requirement. You can just use it, which opens up the window to a lot of different things. So you're not limited by your ability to empower demons at any given point. You're not limited to the amount of demons that you can empower via power trip, which, let's be honest, is ridiculously overpowered. You're not really limited to very many things besides what your timers and GCDs will allow you to put out. There's no limitation because shards aren't an issue pretty much ever. Your ability to empower demons aren't an issue. And the summoning of the actual demons via Dreadstalk, called Dreadstalkers, is a pretty short cooldown in general, and you use it pretty much on cooldown every time. So there's really not much limitations for demo besides in-game mechanical limitations via timers.
Yeah, right. Like, I was looking over here at talents. I hit the wrong button, actually. Sorry. But, like, there are some talents that are sort of... It's a weird amalgamation of, like, you can still be a warlock that, like, has sort of more dot-oriented stuff, like with Hand of Doom, or stuff like Shadow Flame, and you can have, like, some, like, warlocky things, but then there are some that are just, like, incredibly demon Zookeeper focused only.
Yeah, and it's going to depend on how you want to build it. For example, if you go like Impending Doom, and this is theoretically speaking, of course, as it is alpha.
Sure.
If you go Impending Doom, which reads, Doom also summons 2 wild imps when it deals damage. And then you go Hand of Doom, where Hand of Gul'dan now also applies Doom to all enemies that it hits. Hand of Gul'dan also can summon imps up to a maximum of 5 if it's a 4-stack Hand of Gul'dan when it hits the target. So if you build, say you build Impending Doom and Hand of Doom, which gets rid of your power trip, of course, and then you go summon Inquisitor, which does AoE damage to anything that has Doom on it, that's a lot of Doom and a lot of things being launched at targets that have Doom and a lot of imps being spawned.
And later on with Vlatalish, or however, Vlatalish, the Deadwind Harvester.
Yeah.
You get later on down the road where, I don't know which one it was exactly. That's the Affliction one. Sorry, no, it's yours is the Skull of Minari. My thing reset. My bad.
That's okay.
With where is it? Right here. Imp to the Breach, where your imps explode. They suicide themselves. Yeah. There's plenty of those.
That talent is, and I spoke about this in when I went over the demo artifact weapon and the talents. The combination there is pretty wicked because you can select Fell Implosion, or just Implosion rather, from your talent tree, which is demonic forces suck all your imps toward the target and they blow up and do damage. Then you look at this, where you have Imp to the Breach, like you just said, when your imps would expire, it instead charges the enemy and explodes, right? So instead of them just dying, they charge, blow up, and then they die, right? Then you have another thing here called the Expendables, which reads, when your wild imps die or blow up, other pets are inspired and gain 1% additional damage, stacking up to 25 times. So let me get this straight, Blizzard. You can summon a bunch of imps, manually direct them to go in and blow up a target. Then when they expire, they go in and blow up anyway, and then that inspires their comrades to do more damage.
I'm not sure if demons want to be referred to as comrades, but you know.
Comrades. I don't know what they were thinking in that design. It's cool.
Right.
But it's like, I don't know, kind of questionable right there, but it's going to be really interesting. And then there's another thing there, your last one, which when your pets deal damage, you gain a stack of stolen power at 100 stacks to your Shadow Bolt is increased significantly. I don't know how much that is,
No idea.
but
But that has to work.
it's
Hopefully that works with Doombolt, because that's the other thing people were asking me about when I was
yeah,
testing,
it
or
has
Demon
to.
Bolt.
Yeah.
Whereas the new change on Demon Bolt, if you take this for single target, I would assume, is that
Yeah.
your Demon Bolt replaces Shadow Bolt, and it deals more damage, 30% more damage for each demon you have active.
Yeah.
And
That's a lot of demons.
there's not exactly a cap on demons per se. It's based on RNG, but
Yeah.
you could see up to a 600% increase in the Demon Bolt damage,
Yep.
and that based on its base, it actually does like no damage with no demons out on purpose, but still, it can be pretty insane later on down the road. So
Well, even as it is right now, your ability to consistently keep demons up, if you
Yeah.
know how to manage your shards and properly use Hand of Gul'dan, is pretty extensive. And you can, I mean, even you bare minimum have one demon out, of course. You pretty much you're gonna summon your Dreadstalkers pretty much on cooldown,
Yep.
which is 2 times, or two of them, and then if you have the other one, 3. That the artifact thing, you have 3 of them. So that's minimum 4, which is 120% increased damage just on Demon Bolt there. And then anytime you have imps up, which because of how Doom works, and because of how if you're expecting to impending Doom, and how Hand of Gul'dan works, you're gonna have a lot of demons all the time, no matter what, just through playing the rotation consistently. So that'll be kind of interesting. It's not at all even remotely close to how Demon Bolt was before, where it's like, oh, you fire one, it stacks. You fire one, it stacks.
right.
Which I thought was cool. A lot of warlocks really like Demon Bolt. So I'm kind of interested to see what we can do potentially in the future when our crit and mastery are through the roof and our demons are doing insane amounts of damage with Demon Bolt on top of it also.
Yeah, it's very. A lot of the talent tiers for demonology right now, as they're still working on them, are very. There are clear cut like synergies between different builds, and
Yeah.
which is fine. It's really fun, and it's pretty dramatic how the change has come from live to now to Legion, because it's a completely different spec entirely, and it's gonna be
Yeah.
fun to see how that works on. I did want to lead this conversation to the talent stuff in a moment, so I will not ask about
Yeah.
synergy and servitude just yet. But
Oh, God.
yeah,
Best talents they ever designed for any class. Probably the least engaging talents you could put in the game. So
goodness me. So talk a little about it's like just your both as range DPS right now. Let's pop that range DPS thought bubble. So every expansion, there's always this him and ha about movement is going to be difficult, and casters are going to make sure they need to know when to turret and how to spec for a movement fight, all this stuff. It never like plays out that it's like incredibly damning. Like even fights that
Yeah.
have like lots of movement, quote unquote. Like even like the first phase of Mythic Archimon during progression, when you're moving for grabbing your friends, or you're moving for the giant fell penises that spawn from the ground. Right? Like, nothing happens that make you like, I can't do damage. What is happening, Blizzard? Right?
Yeah.
So for both of you, I'll go to David on this one first. Is this all doom and gloom again? Like, is every ranged caster have to stand around and turret, or is trying to do damage in the move going to be awful? Or how will I do any damage? Is it going to happen? Like, what have you?
It has gotten significantly more difficult as the expansions have progressed, especially from Mists of Pandaria to Warlords of Drare. There was a drop off in movement DPS. That was something that the devs targeted. It wasn't as much as I think they were hoping for, though. One thing that I did notice is there are a few different legendary items. It's a whole nother can of worms
No.
that have equip effects that read something like, using one as an example, your instant cast spells have a chance to trigger Foresight, allowing your next cast time spell to be cast while moving. As one example of many legendary items. That tells me that they're probably going to actually try to put the clamps down a little bit more and make people want to use these legendaries or swap in different legendaries depending on the encounter.
Right. Your face says it all, man. It's weird. I mean, they have come out openly and said, actually, let me pull up this post at MMO Champion to the blue post, because they did talk about the legendary tax, I suppose, that we're going to be having in in Legion because people were always really scared that we're going to just have like a bajillion different legendaries and we're gonna have to farm all of them because for each specialization you have like I want to say 3 that are like very specific to like Enhancement Shaman or Shadow Priest or Affliction Warlock or what have you, right? They're very specific to that spec. But then they're also like nondescript, like sort of across the board armor-based legendaries or like rings or whatever that anyone can use. However, I will pause real quick and say that at the start of the expansion, only 1 legendary at a time can be equipped so that while extraordinarily lucky people will have more choices about which to use, they won't be able to significantly more powerful than some of it isn't quite as lucky. As the expansion progresses, the number of legendaries that can be equipped at once will go up, although still limited to a reflectively small number of slots. They can come from anywhere, with more difficult content having a higher likelihood of dropping them for equivalent time spent. So we'll get 1 legendary available early on, and then when we kill Gul'dan, we'll get 2. That's their way
There's another piece to that post at the very end.
Yes.
Where I believe Watcher says that for mythic content, at least for X number of weeks after it's released, legendaries will basically just be stat sticks. Their equip or proc effects will not apply.
They'll be suppressed. Yeah. They'll just turn off when you're in a raid. They'll work outside of raids, like for like open world content or whatever. They may also work in dungeons and things, but for raiding, they won't actually work until later
For
on.
mythic.
And
For
one of
raiding.
those, one of the things that people have to remember, and there was a blue post about it, is that the design of those legendaries, of course, as it is alpha, is not final. And so they actually, they stated, of course, that if something is in the game that is, when equipped, used in the right talent combination, makes you invincible or makes you heal incredibly high or makes you do insane damage where you're literally untouchable, it will not go live like that. They don't want the rendition of those weapons or those those legendary pieces to be unequivocal to anything else where it's like, I have to have that piece or I will not be good at all. Of course, you're still going to want them, but they're not supposed to be broken. The idea behind them is that the legendaries add flavor to the playstyle, which they compared it to the the class trinkets off Archimonde, which for some people they would absolutely disagree. Marksman Hunters.
Marksman Hunters, how you liking that artifact? That little
Holy Priest.
But the idea
the Holy
behind
Priest
it,
one's bad too.
the idea behind it generally is to enhance what you're actually doing in the playstyle. So we'll have to see how they actually go live.
And they're like cool little hooks, and they're almost like in their own right, because if you only have like 1 on or 2 on, and you have like 4 or 5, like if you have all the ones that you can actually equip for your entire spec later on down the road, and you can only use 2 of them, then you have to like pick and choose. Like for this fight, I can use the ring and the belt. This fight, I can use the necklace and the boots, or whatever the hell have you, right? And that's kind of cool. It's kind of Diablo-y, but
well, there's going to be some interesting decisions that need to be made when they do unlock more than 1 slot.
Right.
Because some armor types or classes have legendaries that overlap with their tier set spots, like helm and shoulders. So do you want to have 2 legendaries equipped and forego having a 4-piece?
Yep.
Yeah. For some classes, and it's kind of sad to say, but of course for some classes, some set bonuses are completely negligible. I remember, was it Disc, or I believe it was Disc, that was using an old 2-piece for like half of Hellfire Citadel?
It was Holy. They were using 2-piece
yeah.
tier 17 instead of 4-piece tier 18 because the stats were negligible and the bonus was just so much better.
Yeah, and I feel like unless they balance things pretty well, that's kind of how it'll be in Legion. I know that they put something on MMO Champion where there's very, very early looks at the tier sets.
Yeah.
And for Warlock, they're quite dull. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, they're kind of make it so you want to pick and choose. They're trying to, so they try to make loot different in Warlords, and they try to make ability pruning different in Warlords, and try to bring in like different play styles for different classes. And it didn't work out that well, but they learned a lot from Warlords. And I think out of all of these expansions that I've been doing this show for now, which is going to be 3, this is the first transitional period where I'm like, wow, they actually like they did. Like they learned from their past expansion.
Yeah.
Right, because now they're trying to make loot have that like moment of like, oh, glob, I just got my legendary ring after grinding this, class hall
Yeah.
quest chain for 2 weeks.
Well,
So-
I personally, I know that there's people that disagree, of course, as there always will be, but the difference between a legendary drop or obtained via an actual unique legendary quest, whereas everyone gets the ring the same way, they do the same quest,
Right.
and it gives the same bonus for everyone, is a very poor legendary structure, and I think that they should have learned that from the cloak. Everyone did the same thing, they farmed the same items for you get your valor or for your 3 weeks, you got to do the raids to get your secrets, then you got to get your runes. No one wanted to do that, but it was required, and everyone's was exactly identical. So I think what they're doing with artifact weapons is really cool, as it's unique for every spec. But I hope that they learn from warlords primarily. The main thing I want them to learn from is that they should not promise content that does not actually end up going live. That's my main thing.
Are you talking about Farallon?
I'm talking about
Dance Studio?
we're talking about capital cities, not Storm Shield and the War whatever the
Spear.
War Spear.
Yeah.
Yeah, not those, because that's not a capital city. That's a PvP area.
And I mean, I think they've definitely learned from that. And
Yeah.
what I hope doesn't happen though is that the value and feel of getting those legendaries actually isn't just like a Korean MMO grind fest,
yeah.
which I hope won't happen. But in some ways, like, it kind of has to be, because both the legendary system with the class hall quests and the artifact grind is the garrison system of
Yeah.
warlords. But the garrison took you like 3 weeks and then you're done. What do you do now? You log in, hit your red button on master plan, log out, right?
Yeah.
So in
Yep.
Legion, though, they want you to feel like you want to get artifacts for your other classes, your other specs, your alts, and it's gonna take you a while to get that, but it'll feel like you keep working towards something that means more than just like plopping down a level 3 barracks.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So
I think that if they keep, because I'm sure that that of course they're going to be making changes to the artifact weapons. I just hope that if they keep the experience of that whole thing engaging in some way, or work towards that a little more, then it'll be fine. It's just, I just hate that linear grind of go get these 10 things, go get these 10 things.
that's fair. I'm going to actually move the talent and artifact discussion till after the break here. So anything else you want to wrap up with real quick before I plug some things?
I'm good. I don't know.
I mean, David's gonna be plugging something after I talk here. You're gonna do your own little commercial spot as well, David. So get ready for that.
Oh, I am.
You
Okay.
are. You are. Put you on the spot here.
He
real
doesn't
quick.
even know.
Yeah. He does now. But I will be real quick, everyone. I'm going to tell you about some things behind the scenes, or some where you can get more information about what we do here at Final Boss TV, of course, or other communities that are out there. A new page on the FinalBoss.tv website is the community page right here at Favored. And this page is a gigantic, organized to some degree. We're still working on another build of it, where it's got different class-based websites, awesome news places, different communities only. There are other content creators on here. There are different, again, there's Chain Heel and Altered Time and Ravenholt. There are different YouTubers that we either worked with or we really enjoy their stuff. So if you're looking for more World of Warcraft coverage as Legion comes out, of course, there's Jesse Cox and, well, Krendor. Krendor's best non-content NA. And then there's Nixium, and everyone else is on here. If you're looking for other names that you haven't heard of for, or also graphic designers down here, if you're looking for some art commissions to be done, they're all right here. Just don't ask to get for anything from this guy, because he's basically my slave right now. Whammo. But additionally, of course, everything Final Boss TV is located on our website. And if you want to help support what we do here at Final Boss TV, then we also have a really good art and apparel site, I would say, that actually, talking about Whammo and Fabelina real quick, are actually working on our first duo designs. The next designs that I have up on the store will be done by both Whammo or Fabelina, or them together. But Fei has a whole bunch of shirts on here right now. They also have the Final Blame stamp. We have the 2 Method shirts, which we'll have to see who gets world firsts in Legion, because they get another shirt made as well. But they're all right there. Get yourself a shirt or a hoodie or some stickers. Oh, these stickers are so good. And help support what I do here. And then, of course, everything you want to know about me is also on our YouTube, our Twitter, our Facebook, all linked down below the stream. Our other affiliates that want to help, that help support what we do. If you want to help keep me doing what I'm doing here and keep the shows rolling, all the support goes a long way. And thank you all so much. And I'll give a shout out to my assistant producer patrons at the end of this show. But David also has something that's been working on for a little while now. What's this website that I have here? Here, David, what's this?
So, for those that don't know, I leverage simulation craft quite heavily for my own theory craft and uh, see a lot of value in it for players in general. But one of my, I wouldn't say complaints, but one of my concerns has generally been that players that are not familiar with simulation craft view it as being a bit daunting to use.
Sure.
So what I've tried to do is put together a front end out on the web where people can queue up their characters to be simulated in a variety of different ways, um, and get their stat weights really easily so that they don't have to worry about going and getting the latest version of Simulation Craft or setting all the right settings. They can just fire it off and go. I actually just pushed it out into beta last night. It's been up for a few weeks with some people poking at it.
Yep.
But effectively, the way that this works, this is Bayo Torch, which is a combination of Blowtorch, which is my own simming computers, and a Beowulf cluster, because there's now more than one of them, where you can queue up your character, and then it gets processed on my hardware and reported right back up for free. If you are a How to Priest donor, you get a little bit of a few perks, like higher iteration counts, and more queue slots. But being able to queue up your character and get your stat weights is super easy, and it's free. That'll always be free. I may add some extra Patreon level features later on because there is a cost to this to me, electricity.
Sure.
But it's not giant. It's not monumental. It's not anything stopping me from making my processing power available to the community. One of the big stretch goals that I'm working on right now for Legion is being able to open up my processing power when I'm not using it for my own simulations. For example, I did 500 million iterations total to get my stat weights for Hellfire Citadel. It took 5 days on one machine.
Wow.
Yes, I built another machine that's a lot more powerful to cut down on that time. But while I'm not using it, make it available for other people to use, other theory crafters to use if they have custom action lists that they want to run, but they don't necessarily have the computational power to get those detailed results.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be awesome. It'll be eventually made a banner for on the Firelord's Favored page. There's another pass coming for that, but that's a really great resource that I will be using. And why you bring it up now and why I wanted to make sure we plug it is because when things change in Legion and all these SimCraft backend people update their working models for all your different specs, a lot will have to be changed because of like have to factor in relics and artifact perks and different spec orientations with different talent calculations. So if you are going to be confused, as many of us may be, then that's a great resource to use because you don't have to. You can just do it right there on Bayo Torch. So yeah, thank you for your time for that. That's a really great addition to all of us nerds here.
I certainly hope that people find it handy.
Yeah. So all right then, we'll talk about talents now. So, Demonology Warlock stuff, and then I'll go back to Twin Top on that. Are there any talents that are looking thus far that are like dead combinations or problem picks or any distinct cookie cutter specs forming for the Demonology Warlock so far? You can talk about Synergy and Servitude right off the bat if you want to.
Oh God. So, if you're familiar with Synergy and Servitude, I'm sorry. So Synergy's the same. Doesn't really change. 15% damage increase to the other. If chance when the other one deals damage. Pretty boring. Service and Supremacy both outdo it at this point. Pretty much in any situation. I'm more favoring Service personally, because you're double. If you get like a double empowered Wrathstorm, it's pretty. It's a lot of damage. And then there's Servitude, which is just so shit. I'm sorry.
Permanent Doomguard or permanent Infernal.
Yeah, permanent Doomguard, permanent Infernal. And it never was engaging, it never will be engaging. It will always be that boring thing where if you ever spec into it, you're probably going either Supremacy or Service anyway. And Demon Bolt and Summon Inquisitor are just both more fun. Not to mention Demonic Servitude isn't that good. Mathematically speaking, it's not very, very good at all. As far as other talents that don't really interest me at all. Demonic Calling, Shadow Bolt has a 15% chance to make your next call Dreadstalkers free. Pretty useless because shards aren't an issue for you anyway. And a 15% chance is pretty low. Pretty low, and just not worth it compared to something like Shadow Flame, which gives you a free soul shard and can stack, and you get 2 charges of it. And then there's Shadowy Inspiration, which is Demonic Empowerment also causes your next Shadow Bolt to be instant.
Which actually doesn't work like that. Did they fix this yet? Because I was actually working on Hand of Gul'dan.
Yeah, I don't. If they did, I don't know. I haven't got to test it in a little bit, but as it is right now, or even as if it was Hand of Gul'dan, I still don't think it would be worth it personally, because you have to cast Demonic Empowerment just to get that next one to be free. Right. I just don't feel like, why would you do that when you can just have Shadow Flame? Like, Shadow Flame's just really good. As far as Impending Doom, probably coupled with Hand of Doom, the problem with Impending Doom is your Doom has to actually do the damage. Right. And they, with how haste is right now, at least, it's got to be up for like 15, 16 seconds for your Doom to tick. Then there's Implosion, which is pretty cool. Mortal Coil, if you PvP, I guess that's what you pick. Or Shadow Fury. Isn't Shadow Fury a cast time now? Yeah, it's a 1.5 second cast, which is just, my God.
It's so really not that bad.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But for Soul Leech, for PvE, Soul Leech, in my opinion, is pretty much the only way to go still, unless you really need that stun. Soul Harvest is kind of interesting. It's the exact same thing as it is for Affliction, and I don't really see a place for it compared to Power Trip or Hand of Doom. Because I'm very, very sold on Power Trip. I can't see very many situations where even Hand of Doom would outdo it, except for in mass sustained AoE, perhaps.
Right.
Because Power Trip reads Demonic Empowerment now affects all active demons. Like, how do you beat that?
The trade-off, to make sure the chat knows, is that when you normally Demonic Empower, you only get 3
it's only,
of your
it's only 3.
Yeah.
And you can have, theoretically speaking, more than 20 demons at a time. So why would you... I mean, when you can empower all of them, which if you don't know what Demonic Empowerment is, I believe it's, 50% more haste, 50% more health, and then
your mastery.
Your mastery with the damage increase, flat damage increase on them. And so when you have that many demons summoned, like, what the hell is going to beat that? Definitely not Soul Harvest. And Hand of Doom, Hand of Gul'dan now applies Doom to all enemies that it hits. But again, that's going to be minimum of like anywhere from right now 14 to 16 seconds. You have to wait for that Doom to even benefit you. So another thing is your Demonic Circle is now a talent, which I don't really like. Demonic Circle should be a baseline thing for all Warlock specs, in my opinion. And it's also combined into one button. So
yeah,
I don't like that either. Burning Rush is the same. I generally probably going to pick Burning Rush for most situations if I don't need Dark Pact. And then, yeah, Supremacy, Service, Synergy. Summon Inquisitor is interesting. I've seen a lot of people going for this, and perhaps in AoE it might be worth. From when I tested it, the damage generated by the actual Inquisitor itself was not that great. But then again, like you mentioned earlier, there's tuning that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. It's going to be situationally based. And then Demon Bolt we already talked about. So it's interesting. I currently have it built. Shadow Flame, Improved Dreadstalkers, Soul Leech, Power Trip, Burning Rush, Service, Demon Bolt. But like I said, it's going to really depend on the situation you're in and what kind of damage you need.
Yeah, it's funny you didn't actually really mention Supremacy very much, because Supremacy just kind of double dips with your Mastery, though.
Yeah.
Which is like...
Yeah, I glossed over that real quick.
It's just more... The health increase never worked properly, and neither does the health increase from Empowerment. That didn't work last time I was testing. But then you just gain 20% additional damage on your... The wording is awkward, because it only works on your pet demon, not your other demons.
One demon, yeah. And that's why... In my opinion, Service is mostly going to be the best thing. And that's my opinion, of course. Having the ability to summon 2 Wrathguards or whatever the hell they're called, and they run in. They're empowered, of course, because you can. If you guys didn't know, I think maybe we mentioned this earlier. There was a blue post stating that Demonic Empowerment is not supposed to have charges and it's not supposed to have a cooldown. So it is supposed to be freely usable at any point in time. Which means that if you, regardless of how many demons you're summoning in what situation, of course, there's going to be a way to optimize it to make sure that you're doing your Demonic Empowerment at the right time. But that coupled with another demon every 2 minutes on top of your Doomguard, which now we should gloss over probably is a 3-minute cooldown. Your big demon that you summon is only a 3-minute cooldown. So obviously priority is going to be keeping that empowered, and then keeping your dogs empowered with your special the pet that you summon as a Demolock, and then your service pet also.
I wanted to make sure it's either Doomguard or Infernal is a 3-minute cooldown.
Yeah, or
it's
Infernal.
Your only cooldown, right?
Yeah, your cooldown one. And I mean, does anyone use Infernal? I know that we haven't for a long time, but
I would only argue it's only going to be good on AoE.
Yeah. Even then, I think the priority damage on whatever the actual target is probably going to outweigh the AoE damage that your Infernal does, because even it's just never been very good. So unless they change something with it or buff your Infernal, I don't think it's going to be worth using in any situation.
All right. Well, it's a whole lot going on there, and it only sounds like there's like 2 to 3, like I would put like dead talents, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which is
Demonic
pretty good.
Calling, I think is dumb. I think it's dumb. Mortal Coil has no place in PvE. It never has, because it doesn't actually heal you unless it affects the target. That's how it was with the fear before. If your fear didn't hit the target, it didn't heal you. So if you're using it on a boss, you're not going to fear that boss away. So why use it?
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's not too bad though.
No.
Not too bad. All right, Twin Top. Let's do a breakdown of talents for the new Shadow Priest, sir.
All right.
What are good ones? What are bad ones? What you got?
Well, I think we should just jump right into it. Surrender to Madness.
Yes.
So this is an interesting conceptual talent. Basically, when you're in void form, you turn it on, and it increases your insanity generation by a massive amount. It was 300% before, now it's 200%. And once you leave void form, you die horribly. It's insta-death, can't be prevented at all. And they added actually another side debuff to it where you can't be battle resed for 3 minutes. Because there was a little bit of speculation, since Ret Paladins have a passive where anytime one of their party or raid members die, they gain extra damage. There was a little bit of thinking of shenanigans like stack Ret Paladins and have a couple Shadow Priests and just battle res them.
Yeah.
So there's a couple issues with Surrender to Madness, though. The biggest one being that once you start getting to really high stack counts of void form, the amount of insanity drained per second reaches a point where if you have any sort of latency or push a single wrong button, you end up not being able to get a cast off and you drop out of it. Yep. So having increased insanity generation is nice, but you're still limited by lag in a lot of ways.
Physical, the stack eventually will drain 100 sanity in 2 seconds.
Right.
Like, because it ticks every second, and it will eventually drain over 50 a second, so you will drop out regardless. There is a hard cap, yeah.
Exactly. So one of the things that they could potentially do to make it a little bit more manageable is, instead of increasing insanity generation from abilities, decrease the insanity loss by some factor. Make it drain by 1/3 of its current. That way, you know, your insanity generation in the beginning of void form anyway really doesn't matter, because you start overcapping over 100 constantly anyway. That would just happen for a longer period. It wouldn't be as susceptible to things like latency, or, you know, having to take one step to the side mid cast and end up just falling over dead. As it stands right now, to touch on a couple of other talents in conjunction with this as a tangent, for whatever reason, and I absolutely love it, and I hope that it stays this way, a lot of our talents are named after expansions or releases of other Blizzard titles. In the level 60 column, there's Reaper of Souls.
Yep.
And in the level 100, there's Legacy of the Void.
Yep.
Which is just kind of like, I will certainly take it. I'm okay with this. But Surrender to Madness doesn't really stack up in its usefulness when compared to Legacy of the Void or Mind Spike, which are the other two level 100 talents. Now, tuning needs to be done, of course, but Legacy of the Void, especially when you pair it with something like Shadowword Void. So Legacy of the Void, after you cast Mind Blast, stacking up to twice, the next Shadowword spell you cast has its damage increased by 50% or 100%. So really, if you don't take Reaper of Souls or you don't take Shadowword Void, the only available typically Shadowword that you can use is Shadowword Paint, and it does snapshot, right? So you will get the benefit of it. But Mind Spike, on the other hand, just stacks up really high. It replaces Mind Flay, still generates Insanity, and it makes it so that the next time you cast Mind Blast, it increases the damage done. So both of those are direct, constant increases on your damage, typically from nukes, right? Whereas Surrender to Madness is supposed to be this great cooldown. It's a 10-minute cooldown, that has a huge downside. When it expires, you're done. You're out of the game for basically the rest of the fight. Because let's face it, especially during progression, you're not going to want to purposefully die.
Yeah.
You can't have battle reses assigned for people unless it's part of your strategy, like on Mythic Archimonde for tanks, so you don't have to soak chaos, for example. So Surrender to Madness is great in concept, but it doesn't give you enough to make the downsides worth it.
Yeah.
Right now. It either needs to be like a lower cooldown, or the first time you use it during an encounter, you don't die, or something needs to be added to it to bring it up for usefulness. Before the 3-minute cooldown or the 3-minute debuff on battle reses, there was one specific-ish use case that I could see, which would be like, take a fight like Mythic Archimonde, for example. While you're progressing, it's going to be more than 10 minutes long for the encounter. So you can use it twice. And you really need a lot of damage in the beginning to push it to phase 2, and you need damage at the end. So you could use a talent like this then, assuming you could get battle resed and still be able to contribute during the rest of the encounter. I just don't see this going live the way that it is.
Right. It's a little too gimmicky. It doesn't have enough of a payoff, I guess.
Yeah,
so.
There's no meat to it.
Yeah. What other talents are you looking at?
As far as dead talents go, I would say I'm not a big fan of Shadowy Insight in its current iteration. Now, in Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor, Shadowy Insight had a 5% chance to proc off of a Shadowword Pain tick. And it would reset the cooldown on Mind Blast, but it would also make it instant cast. So if you got a late proc when Mind Blast cooldown was coming up to being off naturally, right? At least you would get the benefit of being able to push the button and get the damage to go out immediately. But with this, it's just a chance to reset it, which doesn't really do a lot, especially when you're in Void form, because it has such a reduced cooldown anyway. This is one of the reasons why Shadowy Insight hasn't been that great of a talent if you take Clarity of Power, because it already has such a low cooldown. There is one use case I can see, again, going back to legendaries, where this may end up being very powerful. There is one legendary that changes Mind Blast to be able to have up to 3 stacks, or 3 charges. So if you dot everything up and you have this legendary and you take Shadowy Insight, you can start banking charges and they don't go to waste.
It is built into the database right now that Mind Blast has 1 charge for that eventuality, yeah.
Right, exactly. So you could end up using it there. Otherwise, I really just don't see it, especially since Mind Blast is, number 1, a big insanity generator, and it's a large chunk of damage, number 2. But in this last build or the build before for Auspicious Spirits, They added it so that every time a shadowy apparition strikes, you gain 10 insanity. So now it's back to kind of the same issue that you see in Warlords of Draenor right now with shadow orbs. Is okay, I can get a shadow orb from shadowy or from auspicious spirits, or I can also get a shadow orb by getting a faster mind blast reset from shadowy insight. Granted, they're on different tiers right now, but it's which one's better. Well, it's going to depend on fight type largely. So really, the whole level 75 talent row is around. They're centered around your dots and changes to them. The last one, San Lian, is it increases the damage done by your vampiric touch, which also means that your self healing goes up, and it increases the healing done by your vampiric embrace, which means your raid cooldowns healing goes up as well. So if you've got a fight where there's going to be a lot of targets and a lot of constant damage, or you need to be able to pump out more healing as a cooldown, you have that choice. Otherwise, it's more about getting extra insanity generation to beef up your DPS. I like having that sort of a decision during progression, at least. Once it starts getting into farm, you're probably never going to take San Lian.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there was a couple talent tiers that I've always looked at when I do all these first pass videos, and I test every single spec of the game. First pass, second pass, third pass. We're still doing the first ones right now for between 2 and 5 hours. Damn you, Arcane Mage. And sometimes I do get bumped into the talent tier that I'm like, wow, those are all like, wow, I could, yeah, okay, those all sound pretty good. Or some talent tiers where I'm like, I will never, ever take this talent ever. So it's good that there are those building blocks. And again, like maybe Shadowy Insight does become a lot better thing if you get that Legendary, right? But then like Auspicious Spirits obviously screams cross-dotting. And then San Lane is, cross-dotting a little bit, but also could be a good single target increase too, because just Vampiric Touch is also a really strong dot. Also gives you a stronger, like you said, raid cooldown. So, yeah, there are good choices there, I think. Anything else that comes to mind here?
I'm just going to call that talent Sandlion.
Sandlion. Ah, yes.
Because people are telling me I'm not enunciating it properly.
Yeah, I think it's.
So
I'm
just going to go
called,
full in.
Yeah, they're the vampiric race in World of Warcraft. Maybe it's the Sand Lane, but the Sand Lion I think sounds good too, David.
I'm just going to call it Sandlion.
Sandlion.
Yeah.
So the other interesting one that we kind of touched on a little bit when we were talking about Shadow Crash is level 90 row is really, Power Infusion, Mindbender, Shadow Crash. Mindbender is very much fire and forget, and its insanity generation scales as your haste scales because your shadowy, your Mindbender or your Shadow Fiend's attack rate scales with your spell haste, melee haste, doesn't matter. So you're going to be able to get a lot out of it. It's going to probably be the go-to, especially in like single target. But when you have multi-target, Power Infusion is probably going to be very helpful, or if you need an extra raid cooldown, because, for example, if you were to pair it with Auspicious Spirits, you get your Shadowward Pains to tick faster, you can generate more spirits, get more sanity, maybe be able to stand Void Form longer. Something else that I neglected to comment on at the beginning of the show that's actually quite important is when you're in Void Form or when you have stacks of Lingering Insanity, Shadow's GCD cap is no longer 1 second. It's actually lower. It's more like 0.66, I want to say. It could be as low as 0.5. And so what that means is, because it's very easy to go above GCD cap, or regular GCD cap, which is 50% haste. Like, you'll do that from one Void Form just right away, which would make the value of haste totally worthless if that were the case. So they have thought about this. They have thought ahead. And now you can get well above, and haste will scale well above 100% total sheet haste. Maybe as high as 125 or 150%. So being able to take Power Infusion is going to make it so that you're not constantly just GCD capping, trying to hard cast spells. With that being said, it may pose a bit of a challenge for some players to be able to adjust to having a lower GCD than 1 second, especially if they have high latency. It's one of those, your talent combinations may end up being influenced by how far away from the servers you are, or if you have a lot of outside excess sources of haste. It's interesting. I think it's better than not having it,
Right.
but I think their hand is kind of forced given the design for Shadow. And going back to Shadow's roots, where it's all about haste, like completely all
I
about
didn't
haste.
know that about the GCD thing. That's crazy.
It's going to make it very interesting in time walking dungeons as well, because you can use the legendary meta gem from TOT, which for casters is
Of course you can.
Of course, why
Of
not?
course.
So
Why
let's say
not? Fuck.
if you're a troll and you take power infusion and you have bloodlust and you have the legendary meta and you have a giant stack, you're going to be casting very, very, very quickly. The other change that's actually been made that's kind of related to that, jumping up to the level 60 row real quick, is Mind Flay is once again back at 4 ticks. They had reverted it back to 3 ticks like it was before the Warlords of Draenor added the perk, as a very good thing, especially since Mind Flay is one of the only abilities that's up to this point would scale past the GCD cap since it was a channeled. So,
Right.
for the level 60 row, though, and let me just say, there are a lot of talent rows that directly impact how you gear and how you do damage.
I believe it.
And I like it, but I don't like it at the
Oh
same
no!
time. Like, no, I like it because it gives a lot of options, but it makes a bit of a balancing nightmare, or you just throw everything out the window and you can be OP in certain situations. Reaper of Souls is a talent that, in a lot of ways, parts of it, I feel should be baseline. Right now, so Shadow Word Death presently, and for as long as I can remember back several expansions, has always been a double tap. You can press it once, and then if it doesn't kill the target, you can press it again. And it's been an orb generator for as long as since Mists of Pandaria. So the change that they've made is it's only a single tap now. It's not a double tap, which is strange since muscle memory says to hit it twice. But also, Shadow Word Death doesn't generate insanity unless it kills the target by default. So you end up in an interesting situation where if you're in execute range and you're in void form, you're not going to be using your execute because you need to get more insanity. Reaper of Souls kind of fixes this by generating insanity whether or not the target dies, and it ups it to underneath 35% health instead. I think that you should generate insanity regardless, and that the insanity generated should be increased if you take Reaper of Souls. Maybe lower the baseline and then pump it up a little bit.
I mean, not to play devil's advocate on this one though, but they did want to make executes like a big warrior thing. So the fact that you still even technically have one is kind of like, we could have removed it.
Warrior and Shadow Priest.
Oh, now they added the comma and Shadow Priest?
They said Warrior and Shadow Priest.
Okay, uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
Rip
we still have
Shadowburn.
one. It's not that it isn't good. It's just that there are going to be some cases, especially once you get into execute, where you're going to have a lot of buttons to press, and you're just not going to be able to press some of them because it's not going to be good. The other two talents on there are just kind of Void Ray is pretty much straight single target, and Void Lord it'll carry over a little bit of your haste into the next Void form, so you don't have that abrupt drop off from being at 100% haste to 30% haste.
Well, right.
Right
Void
away.
Lord's a new thing. The tooltip, actually, I was looking at Void Form real quick before we move on, was that originally, after you left Void Form, you had Lingering Insanity, and it says the haste bonus will persist for up to 60 seconds or until you enter the next Void Form. But
Yes.
that isn't
Now-
the case anymore, right?
Well, no, that was a change from what it was before. What it was before is when you left Void form, you would get Lingering Insanity for, I want to say, 25 seconds. and it would carry over and spill over into
the next void
form. And they changed it so that along with, well, the changes happen in separate builds, but I believe the thinking was linear on this, that you can still have the benefit of that extra haste until you go into the next void form. And then you have this talent, Void Lord, which extends that duration a little bit in. And there's another legendary that extends it by another 5 seconds, actually, so that you can still have that extra haste at the beginning.
Oh.
Strangely enough, the beginning is where you don't need the extra haste because the drain from of Insanity is at its lowest,
right.
and you're probably going to be overcapping anyway. But it does smooth out going from really high haste down to kind of mediocre haste while you build it back up. It was a little bit jarring before, and it still will be if you don't take it.
Okay.
I just had one thing to mention real quick.
Yeah.
I didn't respond earlier when you mentioned mobility for casters. I just wanted to throw in that it's kind of always been that way, especially for Destruction Warlock, with the exception of Mists of Pandaria, because the use of Killjaden's Cunning when it was nerfed into a talent was pretty seldom used, with the exception of a couple very high-end progression raiders like Sparkugs, for example, used it on Imperator Margok. Very, very seldom used, but one thing that I just wanted to note is that it will remain the same for Destruction. The thing about Warlocks, for example, as far as mobility is concerned, up until this point, was that they always had very, very good mobility built in with Burning Rush, with your portal, and with your personal portal, so your Gateway, Burning Rush, and personal portal. But with Demo now, you actually have an ability called Demon Wrath that I just wanted to mention real quick, which you can actually cast on the move, so it pulses AoE from your demons, which are all in melee range, even your imps anyway. And it pulses, so you can do that while you move as a filler for AoE as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there. As far as movement goes for Warlock, Demonology, as usual, has something, but so far Destruction and AF are kind of lacking there. But do I think it's going to be the end of the world? No. There's always a way that you can optimize your positioning, your movement, make sure you're moving at the right times to the right place, and make it work.
Definitely. I think, I didn't go over Demon Wrath. I went over pretty extensively in my testing too, because it actually doesn't even tick per demon. It just ticks per aura.
Yeah.
So if you have 50 demons out, you don't get 150 ticks. You get 3 in a wider area based on what your demon coverage is. But you can channel it while moving. So you're like, rah, and you can gain shards while you're demon wrathing. There's a small chance, but... So chat, you have a couple of minutes with these guests to take some questions. I didn't realize that it was getting so close to almost 2 hours, and we can't go over 2 hours because that's just not how this show format works. But I do have, while the guests, or while the chat catches up to post some questions we can answer, where are the best places to go to get Warlock information? Are there a Discord? Are there any Google documents being put together for the Warlock? Are there any websites or forums that you need to plug for your Warlock friends out there?
Well, there's my channel, which of course is not the extent of Warlock content, but I'm gonna plug that anyway. Which
That's fair.
You have for later. I'll cover everything pretty much on the Legion Alpha at some point or another. I know there's the Warlock IRC channel, but I don't have that. The person that you would reach out for primarily most of mathematical Warlock information and resources as far as channels to join is probably going to be Gatto, who of course we had on last time.
He'll be back.
He always is very, very good to stay on top of things like that and at least provide especially the IRC channels. So there's not too many resources for us, but there's one thing about Warlocks is that besides the couple that just seem to hate all other Warlocks, some of us do discuss things and try to get it out there for people. So
David's got the Warlock Discord there for you. Nice.
He's got it, dude. Look at it. He knows more about Warlock than I do.
Every Discord.
Yeah, he is. I think he is probably in every Discord.
I have that. I have one, but it's not the that one.
And then Twin Top, where can Shadow Priest get Shadow Priesty things?
I stream on occasion, not on any sort of regular schedule. I try to post all my Theorycraft and whatnot over at How to Priest, and have tried to start sharing it a little bit more over on Icy Veins as well. We do have a How to Priest Discord, and I'll grab an invite link for that and post it into chat as well. where, believe it or not, it's more than just Shadow. We actually have some Healy type Pokemons as well.
Oh no.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
um, those are the two primary places. Also, I try to post on Twitter anytime I have any little helpful tidbits that
Yeah.
may have been discovered, or if I do some analysis and throw it up somewhere.
That's fair.
No, Peanut, I did not receive the Razor Naga, and we will not talk of that.
Oh no, what
What is-
happened there?
I would rather
Oh,
not
boy.
say on stream.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah,
Twitter's
so
probably going to be your best bet for small things, like he said. Just
Yeah.
follow Warlocks on Twitter; they'll post stuff.
yeah, but again, the big rise right now, is, of course, is Discord. If you don't know what Discord
Yeah.
is,
Yep.
even Final Boss TV has our own Discord. If you are a subscriber to the stream, you can join that way. I don't make the Final Boss TV one open because it might get a little trolly. So the Final Boss TV one is only for supporters of everything we do here. If you are a subscriber, you can join, and there's a nice little imager link on how to actually join a Discord server. That is a subscription-based one. Otherwise, for a class-based one, which is the Warlock one or the How to Priest one that Twintop just posted, both of them, those are open invite, and you join them just through those links, which you can either use the browser or I prefer the desktop app myself because it makes GIFs really good.
I just jumped in there too, so now that
Oh, now you're actually in the Warlock
I'm actually in the
Discord.
Warlock one.
Okay, good
I don't have
stuff.
time for this anymore, man. I got to whatever.
That's
Continue.
fair. Another question that I did pop up was that Buffalo Jesus, nice name. Where do you see the different legendaries for certain specs? There's no real place that's put together well enough for it yet, but you can search them on like WowDB or Wowhead by like looking for new stuff in the Legion builds and looking for legendary items. A lot of them are still like placeholder name, Warlock Shaman, comma, does this when this happens, like gigantic text names. So
Yep.
you can kind of like, you could find them by looking up oranges in Legion because they're the only ones.
Truthfully, a lot of them aren't worth looking at this stage anyway, because
Yeah.
some of them are very broken, and a lot of it's going to be changed. But still, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think Do Wow did have a list of them, but again, some of the lists of them are just like so placeholder. You have no idea what they're going to be when they finally get finished.
Yeah. Right now, I mean, I don't think you can obtain any of them in alpha right now.
No.
But a lot of them are just kind of concepts or what they threw up against a wall. They're trying to see what might work, what won't. So try not to hold Blizzard to what these legendaries say they will do right now, because when Legion gets released, I guarantee you that most of them will likely have changed.
That is very true. Yep. Absolutely. Well, I think that's going to do it. I can't think of anything else to really bring up particularly just yet. We plugged everything, and we can get out of here at a good time frame. Anything else you guys want to leave your classes with before we get out of here? Anything else you didn't mention?
I think all the Warlock artifact weapons look pretty badass. Not gonna lie. The Affliction ones are pretty sick.
The
not gonna lie.
floaty skull, he actually floats around you and stuff. It's so good.
He's annoying, man.
Oh.
I think he's annoying. It's cool, but it's annoying. His ability, which I just want to throw in real quick, he can run in, basically warp in, teleport in to whatever you're targeting, and do a AOE damage and fear undead and enemies, which I think is completely unnecessary. So I wish they would just get rid of that. But
Oh, Muffin.
the fear is so. Why would you want that?
And David, how good does Void Form look? Is it looking better?
So there was a bit of confusion as to what was going on with Shadow Form. It is totally fixed now. Shadow Form looks like Shadow Form. In fact, as you start gaining insanity, Shadow Form gets more Shadow Formy.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
heard about
word.
that.
Think like not quite Glyph of Shadow, up past where current unglyphed Shadow Form is. And as you get closer and closer to Insanity and then finally go into Void Form, you start seeing these blue crackling animations come off of you that get more and more intense the longer you're in Void Form, and tentacles start sprouting out of your back. It's really cool looking.
That's sick.
Very well done. Very old god feeling.
And your passive on your dagger is you spawn tentacles near you too that mind flay the
Yes.
target. So
Yeah, so little tentacles will come up, and the mind flays that they do are no joke. It's not just an extra flavor thing. They're a good damage increase.
well, very good. Well, gentlemen, that's gonna be the button. I think it's time for this. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to episode number 110 of Final Boss TV, your WoW and Game rating show. This is volume 3 of Let's Talk Legion. Again, all of my socials and stuff are below the stream for Facebook and YouTube and for Twitter. Follow me on those for past shows. We're also on iTunes and Stitcher. You can look us up if you want the audio-only versions of the show. But let's go over here real quick to say goodbye to Twintop. You can follow him on Twitter at TwinTopTahoe, as well as the other places that he plugged earlier in the show. Thank you for being on the show again, sir. We'll have to see
Thank
who's
you for
winning.
having me.
Oh, absolutely. We'll see who's winning between you and Roger Brown for most casted.
He'll probably win. You know,
Yep.
that whole top end raider thing.
Well, we'll see. The method is dead now in Legion.
Ooh.
But I'm sure I'll bring you back on the show in the future. We got a lot more stuff to talk about, and as Shadow Priest changed, and as Alpha Betas and Gamma Epsilons. So, thank you again, sir, and keep working on that wall. Get Frostburn out of the box.
I will do that. That's on the short list.
Oh, goodness. And there's Pyromancer again. You can follow him on Twitter as well at Pyromancer Sarge. That's the server he's on, apparently.
Sargeras.
Yes.
Yep.
But keep up with the theory crafting stuff and make sure all the warlocks get all the information they can get, man. I appreciate your time.
Yep, of course. As always, it's always fun to be on here.
And then, of course, everything at our Final Boss TV is at finalboss.tv. All of our affiliates and different ways to support the show, as well as all of our past shows and things, are all right there, as well as the Firelord favorite page. Next week, for episode number 111, I do hope to bring on 2 healers. I know Dayani will be here, and then I'm still trying to find, like, a Holy Paladin or someone else to bring on to do double healing discussion. Because we had Jack on before, but he was only talking about, like, Discipline Priest, really, because he's a nerd. But I'll bring on 2 healers next week, and then after that, I want to do 2 tanks. So stay tuned on Twitter and Facebook for updates on when those are going to go live and who the guests will be, more importantly. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you all so much for watching. Real quick, of course, thank you to my assistant producers on Patreon, Erdwin, Oscar, and Death Scythe Pally. Derry's still supporting it, but she's a little smelly now, and she actually lowered it. So she still sucks the worst. She's terrible. So I'll see you all next week. I keep bumping the microphone. And trusting your seal of inevitable gold. That's all we get. And until next week, everybody. Bye. Bye. Wave. Wave at nice people. Wave. Bye.
Bye.
Wave. Goodbye. Bye, everybody. Keep.
Wasn't paying attention.
Yep. Dork.
Yeah.